You're listening to The White Rabbit, conversations on the art of presenting in a rather noisy world. Your hosts are Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. Matt helps leaders of international companies speak, write, and present with confidence. Alper is an author, communications trainer, and a startup investor with a diverse portfolio of companies in Barcelona. If you like this podcast, please share with your friends and colleagues. Now, on to Matt and Alper for today's conversation.
Alper, we're both big fans of Win Without Pitching, Blair Enns.
Yes.
And huge fans. I'm a big fan, but you're an even bigger fan of Win Without Pitching.
Yeah.
Blair Enns, in fact, I think we did an episode where we looked at some principles that Blair Enns was talking about. And we asked ourselves, or a model that he uses, and we asked ourselves, can this model be used for presentations also? So
yes.
This is not the first time that we've talked about Blair Enns on this podcast. And in fact, many of our
probably
listeners...
won't be the last time.
Yeah, probably it won't be the last. And many of our listeners probably know Blair Enns through the Two Bobs podcast, which is a very popular podcast. I know that you and I both listen to it on a regular basis. And if you have not heard, or if you are not a regular listener of the Two Bobs podcast, I highly recommend it. You would recommend it too, wouldn't you, Alper?
Of course, yeah. Like that would be my number one recommendation.
Yeah, mine too. So today we're going to talk about Blair Enns' first book, which was Win Without Pitching, and specifically, what are some of the things that Alper likes about this book, about Win Without Pitching, about Blair Enns' thought. Enns' thought. What word would you use for that? Ennsian thought. Maybe Ennsian thought or Ennsism. Or let's say Ennsian thought. Okay, so today,
actually, I think he himself calls it Blairism.
Does he really?
It doesn't. I think so. I definitely remember one expression that he used about being on Blair land, something like that. And I'm not 100% sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is some Blairism involved as well. Rightfully so, by the way.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about some of the things that Alper likes most about Blairisms. Some Blairisms that Alper likes the most. So tell us about a little bit about what you like about Blairism, Alper.
Well, when I do that, I think it's going to sound like I'm advertising the book. Just to be clear, full disclosure from the beginning, we have absolutely no connections no affiliations with either authors or the book. We have no monetary gains. We are just doing free advertising for something that we are both passionate about. For all I know, these people may not even know that we exist.
True.
But nevertheless, the message has resonated so strongly with me over the past, I would say, a decade, and even more than a decade. That I just feel like talking about it.
Yeah.
And in many reviews, this book is actually called the Bible of I don't remember of what, but I definitely remember the word Bible. And in a sense, I would completely agree with that. This is something that you can take, you can read it, you can reread it, you can go back, you can flip, you can take notes, and you can revisit the book.
True.
I think you should revisit this book throughout your career and your business life.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I like the most is, for me, it was a complete game changer in the way I looked at selling my creative services. And it actually enables you to think in a completely different perspective than what we were used to. And when I say we, I mean myself and other people, which I shared this idea, I shared these conversations with.
Tell us a little bit more. How did it make you start thinking differently?
Well, the biggest mindset change that I got after reading this book, and it didn't come in the first part. I mean, that was in the first time, because the message was so impactful that I failed to grasp it in the first time. But over the course of rereading and internalizing it, I got to the point where there's a phrase in I may not be able to quote it word by word, but I think the main message is if you're doing properly the sales of creative services or any type of sales for that matter, you shouldn't need to convince people. And I think the words in the book were, it's not our job to talk people into things.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
for me was a complete game changer. I think we talked about this in one of the previous episodes as well. Because I was in the mindset that I should go out there, I should put on my best form, I should make a killer presentation, and everybody, my client, my prospective client at least, would be convinced to work with me and to buy my services. And you know me
mentioned,
long
let
enough.
me interrupt you for a second. You
Go ahead.
mentioned before, back before your presentation trainer days, when you were working for a company, and I don't remember what company it was, but I definitely remember after one of the sales calls, you go out into your car and you think, I'm doing something completely wrong, and you start crying in your car and thinking, I'm doing this all wrong. So
Well,
did
that wasn't the presentation business. That was one of my that was before I was selling baskets at the time.
okay.
It was still a sales process, and I had it completely upside down.
Okay.
I would just walk in there, I would start counting the features of the product, and then sometimes get thrown out of offices, go back to the parking lot and reconsider my life choices. Yeah. That wasn't in the presentation business, but it involved a sales process, which
Okay.
I did my fair share of failures before understanding how to do it better.
And so you're doing these things wrong, and you're reconsidering your life choices, and then you stumble on this book, Win Without Pitching. How did that change how you go about the
Actually,
sales process?
I stumbled on this book. I stumbled on this book when I was more actively doing presentation design. I mean,
Okay.
from time to time, I still do it, but there was a time when I started this. That was the only thing that I was doing. And you know me long enough and well enough to remember that in the beginning, my business model was someone would call the offices asking for presentation design service. I would meet with them. I would get their content, I would get their existing presentation, I would put in sometimes days of work into designing what could be, and then I would send it, and then I would accompany that work with a proposal. And more often than not, in the beginning, people would say, well, this is too much, this is way beyond our budget, so we wouldn't be working.
Okay.
But then I would have ended up spending days and sometimes weeks working on a project to get that. The biggest mindset that this book has created is diagnosing the problem, whatever it is, a presentation design, training, or whatever type of business, creative service, or a service that we're trying to sell. Diagnosing the problem itself should also be included in paid services.
Okay. So before Blair
The
Enns,
way I see that was the complete game changer.
so let me see if I'm hearing you correctly. So before Blair Enns, so you're doing a lot of free work. You're basically doing the diagnosis yourself back at the office, and you're doing the
Yes,
diagnosis for free. So the customer is not paying for the diagnosis. And
yes.
after Blair
I'm even
Enns,
starting to build the final product.
uh-huh. Okay. And then you read Blair Enns, and you start thinking, hey, the customer should be paying me for this diagnostic work that I'm doing back at the office, so that I'm not doing free work all the time. Is that correct?
That would be a good way of putting it. It wouldn't be that clear cut.
Uh-huh.
So it wouldn't be like, hey, you need to pay me before anything comes from me to your way. It wouldn't be that black and white, but it definitely cut down the amount of work, unpaid work, let's call it unpaid. It dramatically cut down the amount of unpaid work that I did
Okay.
before determining if there was a good match between what the client needed and what I could offer them.
And
And
was this transition? Did this transition happen overnight, or did this take an evolution in Alper's brain that took a few weeks or a few months or a few years or a longer period of time like that?
It definitely took a few months because it's such a big, for me, it was such a big mindset change that it will be impossible to happen overnight.
Okay.
And I had to test it because it was so new to me. It was so foreign to me. I had to test this new mindset of dealing with new business or business development. And of course, I had my better attempts. I had my worst attempts. I had my successes and failures. But bit by bit, with each new interaction, with each potential new client, I moved into this new mindset. So it took some time. It definitely didn't happen overnight.
And one of the other principles that Blair Enns talks about often, he says, upgrade your business or change your business, improve your business one client at a time. So basically what he's saying is that client A, try out one of these techniques. Client B, try out something a little more advanced. Client C, try out something even more advanced than that. And pretty soon, because of churn, after a while, all the clients that you're working with will be on this new model. Is that how it worked out for you too?
Well, since I have clients that have been working for more than 10 years now, it's not very easy to say I have done a complete transition, but I would say on average, yes, it has worked. It has worked pretty well.
Okay. And so we're about out of time, but let me ask you one more question. And so if I am just starting out in the creative business, I'm just starting out and I don't really have any idea about how to run my business in a more advanced way. I'm freelancing by the hour. I'm selling my services on some freelancer website like Fiverr.com, or what's another freelancer website? There's Fiverr.com. I'm blanking out.
It's a good thing I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm thinking, well, forgetting those names, it's not that big a problem. So anyway, so I'm a freelancer. I'm just starting out. I'm in the first few months of my business. I'm selling my services by the hour to somebody on Fiverr.com. I'm competing against Indians or Chinese who will work for a fraction of the price. What would you tell me?
I would definitely tell you to read the book. Not read it, not only read it, but try your best to internalize it, because some of the chapters deal more with, I think they will deal more with your psychology, with the way you look towards business, with the way you look towards money, with the way you look towards what it means to sell something. So I would definitely recommend owning the book and making a habit of reading it like every week if necessary, and going over that. That's what I meant in the beginning by how this is like the Bible for a specific group of people. And it can create wonders in their lives, but they need to do the work, they need to read, and they need to put it into practice. So if you are in that situation, I would definitely recommend you to buy the book and start reading it.
Excellent. And that's an excellent piece of advice. Just get this book and start reading it. Don't expect your life to change overnight. Maybe it will. That's great. But don't expect your life to change overnight. But like Blair Enns says, improve your business one client at a time. And over the space of a couple of years, you'll look back on how you started and think, oh my God, I was so naive when I started out. I'm so glad that I found this book.
That's exactly what I'm feeling right now when I think back. I was so naive, yes. And I'm so glad that our paths crossed. I became aware of this and I got the knowledge.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Alper. And I'll talk to you next week.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to The White Rabbit with Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. You can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or through your favorite feed.